Hi Sagittarius, welcome to your April 2022 General Tarot reading. It's Raina here. I noticed my camera on my phone like kind of pulsating because it was trying to focus. And it seems to have calmed down, so that's good. Interesting. You know, it's funny. I'm just curious. This is from another deck of mine, so I don't know if that meant it because it flipped over from a different deck. Ten of Wands. I'm not going to include that, but it was kind of just curiosity. Okay, so I have a couple of intuitive cards, the High Priestess and the Moon card. And even the Ace of Swords. This is the intellectual version of this, the clear mind. Now you can see clearly now. This is like about getting rid of those cobwebs in your mind. And this can be like, to me, energetic even. But for some people, this may be a relationship where a person has been lying to you, or otherwise something, you know, it doesn't have to be like a significant other, but you can't figure out why they're acting the way that they are, and it becomes clear to you. When I look at the past position, which is also swords, you can see that the Eight of Swords shows a person who is like being held hostage. But I don't know how many people know that this is kind of an inside job type of thing. It's not that somebody is doing this to you, you're doing it to yourself. Now, initially, someone may have programmed you, conditioned you, but now that you are an adult, and these readings are intended for adults, by the way, so if you're under 18, I wouldn't take what I'm saying seriously. I wouldn't, well, nobody should take what I'm saying seriously, but whatever. The Eight of Swords can be a card of that mental oppression that occurs when you're still buying into the hive mind type of programming, the matrix programming, that you have, you know, the power to kind of transition from. When we talk about ascension, when we talk about some of these elevations or upgrading of our consciousness, our vibration, there's a process. It's not like well, you know, some people might think it's like a switch is flipped and then all of a sudden they're online to a higher level. I remember the first phase of my spiritual awakening, I actually saw a light bulb. And it was like, oh, you know, it was like, then I just like, bam, it's like I went online. But there were so many years in between. I was 19 at that time. There were so many years between that initial awakening and then different levels of it. So it's not necessarily that dramatic where it's just like one day you're completely asleep and the next you're just all knowing. But so it's a messy process. And in the process, you can, you know, in your past, you may have been allowing yourself to still be triggered by certain things, and that's part of the programming too, you know. And now you may be realizing that, and that's what the Ace of Swords is. And what this card really ultimately means is that you can move ahead. That's the, you know, the greatest part about it. It's not just about talking about it ad nauseum and just talking about the past. The past has to eventually be let go of. We can't identify with the past because it's an illusion. It's gone. Even though it is relatively real because it has impacted you, it is no longer valid. The now moment is eternal. So anything that you feel is a vestige from those days, of course you acknowledge it. You don't pretend it doesn't exist, but you don't build your life around those things. And you become as aware as possible. That's the best way I can put it. And that's what I think that this is really talking about. And there's a liberation of what this means, because you're not bound by that old paradigm anymore. The higher message, the bigger picture, is the high priestess, and this is about having that clear connection to your higher self. And for some of you, if you have been too social lately, you need to, tune into yourself. Sag is a masculine sign, so some Sages are very social, very in love with doing things with other people, which there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But when you're doing it excessively, then you can absorb other people's energy and their goals, everything that they are about, that may not be your path at all. And especially if you have a moon sign in Cancer or Pisces, Scorpio. Maybe I'm saying all the water signs, but Scorpios tend to have like that real independent streak, which is from the Mars energy, even the Pluto energy. Both of those are kind of fierce in planetary influences, but there's a receptivity with water in general. So you might have personal planets in Scorpio besides the moon, and they can influence how you absorb energy, in a very, in a very overt way, and that can influence you. So having periods of solitude is so beneficial to cultivate your personal essence, so that you are aware of what your stuff is, and not allowing other people's stuff. That's like a psychobabble word, but it's really like I like that word, stuff. It's very descriptive. And you're not allowing somebody else's experiences and preferences to permeate yourself. And that is very important. But this can happen to anyone. You don't have to have these water planets, because I don't. And I enjoy being in solitude a good portion of the time, because I just, I'm comfortable with it, but I also know that's very important for me. And so it's good to look at your chart and see if you have the sun in the 12th house or something like that, where you may, or moon in the 12th, where you may have like a desire to be alone, and I shouldn't say a desire, a need, like you get overwhelmed when you're with other people. But regardless, the high priestess is about honoring that. And Sagittarians are naturally connected to God, because it's just a natural impulse for a Sagittarian to do that, maybe even from a young age. However, it can sometimes get into the dogma. The ninth house that Sagittarius rules can be very about the, ninth house can be the law. So the spiritual laws or the religious laws, that's the dogma. And that's what the organized religions really have as their, they have their own like do's and don'ts. And the high priestess is more like spiritual than religious. So there's like a more open-ended quality to it. And that's something that allows you to flow with, wherever it wants to take you, instead of having this kind of prefabricated template, if you will. What crosses you is the Seven of Wands. So look out for anyone who, and I'm going back to this Eight of Swords, because yes, like I said, that's an inside job, but it can come from the conditioning from others. So look out for people who are toxic can keep you on the defensive. But even if you no longer have those people in your life, you can still have that defensive quality. And it may not be aggressive, although with Sag, it certainly can, because the Seven of Wands is wands, and that's fire. That's fire energy. So it can have that kind of like um, real sense of like defending your honor, if you will, but in a very like aggressive kind of way. And I notice like when somebody, says something to me on YouTube as a Sagittarian myself, and I'm trying to explain it, that I'm probably coming across that way to the person, even though I'm writing it, because of the energy behind it. And, people say, oh, I didn't mean to offend you and blah, blah, blah. And I have to like check myself and I have to see, what am I doing here? What am I feeling? Am I feeling attacked and I have to defend, or am I simply explaining? Because yes, of course, there is a difference, and sometimes it's appropriate to explain things to people because you want them to really understand where you're coming from. But yeah, it's very interesting how that can happen. So being able to discern those things and see if you are acting in a defensive way because you are in this transitionary state where you are, it's like, and I'm not saying that all of you are here, but this is a message for those who need to hear it, is that you may be starting your awakening process and it's like you're a newborn baby or a child. And it's like you feel like your defenses are down. And they might be. And you might be feeling super vulnerable because you're learning more about yourself and you're seeing, with the Ace of Swords, you're seeing where you have messed up, where you need to change. And sometimes this can be so overwhelming that it can make people feel like they don't have any kind of armor anymore. I was just listening to another to some like spiritual interview or a discussion with two people on YouTube, and they were talking about how the one woman was talking about how we're getting into this phase where where people who have been having this, I don't know if they meant facade, but you know how people run these games on other people, they can't do that anymore because it's like, when the vibration gets higher, all those things that are of the lower energy, they fall away. They become exposed too. So that's we're seeing that as well, as that the things that were hidden becoming open. So this applies to all of us. Even if we're like basically good people, we still have certain tendencies. And these are defense mechanisms. So that can be what the Seven of Wands is warning you about, saying you don't need that anymore. So look at that and see, how you can eradicate that from your life. And of course, it's really just about awareness. The more awareness, the more light is brought into the situation, the more it can just start to fade because you can see yourself in action doing that. But I will say that sometimes it's really important to note that sometimes these are people who are, they're triggering you. And yes, of course, sometimes triggering can be very helpful in seeing where you still need to heal. But I'm not one of those people that believes that we should have people who are triggering us all the time to help us to heal, because it can be re-traumatizing too. If somebody has been through abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, whatever you want to call it, and they're with somebody who is constantly doing that, that's to me not healthy. I can understand, the other side of it, that it's bringing that up, but I still think that when you're in that in-between state, you have to have that kind of, the word that came into my mind is cushion. It's not like, it doesn't mean that you're hiding from it. It's just that you need protection as you are growing into a new creature. What is coming in is the Seven of Cups. This, when I got this card, I was like, oh, shucks, Seven of Cups, not my favorite card. It's almost like confusing to me sometimes because I'm thinking to myself, is this card bad or is this card good or what is this card? Because it is about confusion. It's a very Piscean kind of a card, Neptunian card. But it really can point to a lot of options in your life. And the confusion comes in because you're not quite sure which path you should take. I think that how I would interpret that is that Jupiter is in Pisces. Okay, so if you're probably watching this for your sun and Sag, and so the only thing I can tell you about is your solar house, and even that might not be exactly what I'm saying it is. But for Sag, Neptune is in Pisces, and it's the fourth house of home and family. And in April, Jupiter, our ruler, is forming a conjunction with Neptune in that fourth house. And that can be some kind of beautiful, miraculous thing. And that would have some kind of angle that relates to the home front. And maybe even your childhood, like a healing. But a healing that is, I just think when I think of Jupiter, I think of something lucky. So I really can't think of it in psychological terms, but it might be like really a healing, like any kind of childhood wounds that have been dogging you for many, many years, despite what you try to do to heal them. But to me, it can simply be something mundane, like finding your dream house or something along those lines that you really have wanted, because it's like your sacred space, if you will. And so this could be a timing card about that event, since it involves the ruler of Sagittarius in this. So that, but I also think that there may be this sense of, and it's very interesting because this, like I said, this can be a card of confusion, and the Ace of Swords is a card of getting mental clarity. So what I would say about this card is embrace your options, because you may have them, but you don't want to just jump at something that is a bright and shiny object, because this is that Pamela Coleman Smith is this illustrator of the Rider-Waite deck, and she had such a brilliant, look at that thing at the bottom right, and even at the top right, snakes and dragons or whatever it is, but these kinds of creatures that might not be what you want, but perhaps on the surface they present as something else. And really, it's up to us. We have to practice discernment, but I also think we have to practice restraint, that we're not just like going for something, because a lot of times that's lack consciousness. When you think, oh, I gotta, grab at the first thing that I see in front of me, because that might be the only thing that I see. That kind of thing can be very illusory. Let's put it that way. Speaking of illusory, and then we have another card that is actually connected to Pisces, the Moon card. This is the outcome card. And the Moon card, maybe this is a timing card. What moons do we have in this month? The full moon is in Libra. Libra is in April, I'm talking about, obviously. Libra is the third house for Sag. The 11th house. And the 11th house is a house of hopes and wishes. So that could be something coming to fruition, something that you've always wanted. And you know, maybe that's what this card is representing, is that you have this, the 11th house is the house of gains. So whatever it is that you're gaining or that you're accomplishing, your long-term goals, the Eight of Swords is right above that I was going to say Seven of Neptune, Seven of Cups. And that can indicate that, you know, both of these cards, there can be this sense of, it's very interesting, not knowing what to think, not knowing, like not trusting your own judgment or not knowing what to think. So with the Moon card, it's like with the High Priestess, see, you notice how you have these two that kind of go along and then these two go along, where there's that sense of like, what should I do? Where should I go? What is my next move? And really, the more that you tune into your higher self, the more that you meditate, the more that you be still and know, the more likely you are to come to a solution. That was another thing that in one of the videos that I just recently listened to, the person said that they asked their higher self. And it's funny because, you know, a lot of times we may not believe we have a higher self. We might be in our intellect, our mind. So we're not thinking about that. And maybe it feels silly to ask your higher self, but you might cultivate this relationship. And April is as good a time as any to do this kind of work. It can also be a card of creativity. So you may have a lot of ideas with the Seven of Cups, a lot of things. And the Moon card can give you that download of what it is, of the creative project that you want to start. There's some kind of initiation in the month of April, and it is a good month for initiation. Okay, that's what I have for you, Sag. I hope that this resonated. If you'd like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.